On Thursday, the Labour government announced its new strategy to strengthen democracy and reform the electoral system, including plans to lower the UK's voting age to 16 before the next general election. On top of the biggest expansion of the voting franchise in more than half a century, Labour also wants to introduce changes to voter ID laws, political party funding, and a whole lot more, as part of a forthcoming Elections and Democracy Bill. So in this video, we're going to outline the government's plan and explain what they're designed to achieve. Don't feel overwhelmed by endless news stories. Find out exactly what you need to know every day with TLDR's Daily Briefing. Listen along in your favourite podcast app or by clicking the link in the description. So let's jump straight in. The biggest headline measure is that the voting age will be lowered from 18 to 16, meaning that 1.5 million 16 and 17-year-olds across the UK will be eligible to vote at the next general election. The plans will enable voter registration from 14, allowing people to be fully registered in plenty of time, though the minimum age to stand as a candidate will remain at 18. It's worth pointing out that 16 and 17-year-olds can already vote in Scotland and Wales for local and devolved elections, so this change means that the minimum age of 16 will be consistent at all elections across the UK. This was part of Labour's 2024 manifesto, and the government says that it's about engaging voters early and allowing them to have a say in their future by letting them vote at an age when they can work, pay tax, join the military, and more. While the Liberal Democrats and Greens support the move, Reform UK and the Conservatives oppose it, questioning why 16-year-olds should be allowed to vote when they can't buy a drink, marry, go to war, or stand as a candidate. The conventional wisdom is that lowering the voting age would help Labour and parties on the left, as younger voters do skew left. And as such, several opposition parties have accused Labour of employing a cynical ploy to rig the system. But whatever you think, according to YouGov's Difford, the reality is that if we assume that 16 and 17-year-olds broadly behave like 18 to 24-year-olds currently do, then the net boost for Labour over the Conservatives is around 0.2 points. Elections expert Professor Sir John Curtice estimates that the political impact of this will be marginal, but added that one party to celebrate are the Greens. Anyway, moving on from that. The government says that over the next couple of years, it will work to create an automated voter registration system, though the details remain to be worked out. Before the last election, the Electoral Commission estimated that as many as 7 million people were either incorrectly registered or missing from the register entirely, something that is said disproportionately affects young people, students, and those who've recently moved. The government has also committed to expanding valid forms of voter ID, a requirement introduced by the previous Conservative government, to include UK-issued bank cards so long as it displays the voter's name, as well as facilitating the use of digital voter ID. The deadline for applying for a postal vote will also be moved from 11 to 14 working days before the polling day, to relieve the strain on local authorities that have to deal with the increased popularity of postal voting. Another of the government's aims is to change the rules around political donations. There are two main objectives here. One, preventing foreign interference, and two, preventing parties from gaming the system. The government describes this as creating a know your donor culture, where funding is more transparent and loopholes that could have been exploited by malign actors are closed. One way they aim to do this is by preventing so-called shell companies from being able to donate to political parties. For clarity, shell companies are companies without any real business operations that can be used as a financial vehicle. For example, if a foreign billionaire set up a shell company in the UK just to donate to a party. To stop shell companies from funneling illegitimate funding to UK parties, the government will require companies to have generated sufficient income in the UK or Ireland to be able to donate. The government also wants to close a loophole relating to unincorporated associations, which make up around 5% of total donations. Under current rules, unincorporated associations are only required to disclose their funding sources above the threshold of £37,270 per year, meaning that any funding below this amount goes unreported. To reduce the risk of exploitation, the government wants to significantly reduce the transparency threshold for unincorporated associations to £11,180 per year. Unincorporated associations will also need to nominate someone to be named on the public register, so it's traceable back to a real person. The other element here is enforcement. The government wants to increase the Electoral Commission's powers to fine parties that break its rules, and expand its responsibilities to reduce the burden on the police and the courts. For example, political finance offences related to candidates, local third-party campaigners, and recall petition campaigners can currently only be investigated by the police, while courts are responsible for granting parties or candidates permission to pay late invoices from suppliers. The government wants to transfer these duties to the Electoral Commission instead, setting out its new responsibilities in an upcoming strategy and policy statement for the Electoral Commission. Moreover, the maximum fine that the Electoral Commission can impose for breaches of political finance framework will be raised from £20,000 per offence to £500,000 per offence, with safeguards in place to ensure that fines are proportionate for political parties with fewer resources. The current maximum fine of £20,000 is less than 0.5% of what many political parties, including the Conservatives, Lib Dems, Labour and Reform, spent in the 2019 general election. So the increase is designed to provide a meaningful deterrent against serious violations. In relation to digital campaigning, the government plans to add unregistered third-party campaigners, which include advocacy groups or campaigns not fielding candidates and spending below £10,000, to the list of entities required to include an imprint on their digital campaigning material. An imprint being a statement of who is responsible for publishing the material and who they're promoting it for. Moving on to the final area, the government says that it aims to defend democracy, pointing to rising abhorrent behaviours directed at candidates, campaigners and electoral staff. Its plans to address this include setting up a Defending Democracy task force to boost its understanding of the issue of intimidation and harassment, as well as making several changes to electoral law. The requirement for candidates' addresses to be published will be removed in order to protect them, and the current law that enables 5-year bans on standing or holding office from anyone convicted of intimidation or abuse of candidates, campaigners or office holders will be extended to include offences against electoral staff too. The government will also require candidates for office to prove their identity, likely to prevent fake or AI candidates, and will introduce a requirement for truth in nomination forms, with penalties for lying. Ultimately, while these plans still need to be put into a bill and approved by Parliament, giving 16-year-olds the right to vote represents a major shake-up in the UK's electoral system, and is the culmination of a long debate about when political rights should begin. More broadly though, it really does feel like we're in a period of political change at the moment. Gone are the days of predictable geopolitics, with Trump's America taking increasingly dramatic turns, so much so that it feels that America's influence, popularity and dominance are all on the decline. So in the next issue of our magazine, Too Long, we're discussing this shift, and the potential that we're currently observing the end of the American order. In that section of the magazine, we discuss our thoughts on everything from the collapse of democratic norms to if America is losing allies, and if the country can maintain its dominance in energy and tech, before discussing who could potentially take over in a post-American world. So if you want to find out what we really think about America, now's your chance. It's not just the US either though. This issue is our longest ever at 78 pages. So we also get into stories like why El Salvador and Kosovo are becoming the world's penal colonies, if the UK is lacking vision at the moment, if Europe can really defend itself, and why leaders like Putin and Netanyahu seem to be getting away with it. Plus, we also have a full interview with Professor James Kerr-Lindsay, who you might also know from YouTube, all about the collapse of the global order. Now, if that all sounds good to you, but you'd rather listen than read along, then you should check out the premium edition. Because anyone who buys a premium edition of our magazine also gets access to our recordings of selected articles. Plus, you also get access to the full 90-minute interview with James Kerr-Lindsay. On top of that, premium subscribers also get access to our behind-the-scenes podcast, The Bullpen. Regardless of whether you opt for the regular or premium edition, if you never want to miss an issue, then make sure you subscribe to Too Long, which gets you 20% off every copy as long as you stay subscribed. Plus, this week only, if you use the code BESTOFFER when signing up for a subscription, you'll get an additional 35% off. That brings down the cost as low as £5.20, or a wild 48% off. That is the best offer we are ever going to offer. So pre-order your copy today to get yourself that extra content and support all of the journalism we do here at TLDR every single day.